What if I told you that there is a word in Greek that is present in almost every verse of Greek you'll ever read? Would you want to learn that word? Of course you would. That word is autos. It is the third person pronoun and it is everywhere. Well, in Greek and in English. It's as thick as fleas on a hound dog. Now, if you just look at the Greek text, you'll see how autos is present everywhere. Look at all that sea of yellow. So obviously, we need to understand this word. Now, thankfully, we'll see that it follows the same sort of pattern that the article does. It's just this nice 2-1-2 pattern. We won't find it that difficult to recognize, but we must recognize this very common word, autos. Remember how nicely the article behaved, this beautiful 2-1-2 pattern that we've come to know and love that shows us the case number and gender just so clearly and without any complications? Well, autos is the same way. In fact, it looks very much like the article with just au added to the front. So autos, autu, auto, auton sounds just like the article with au added to the front. Now, I know this is tough to believe, but every now and then I get into some real arguments with my wife. And the argument usually goes something like this. Can't you see that you're being stupid? It's pretty good argument, right? I'm smart, you're stupid, what can't you understand about this, right? Well, of course, as the argument unfolds and I step back from it and I look at myself more honestly, very often what I find out is that I'm not being smart and she's not being stupid. It's the other way around. I'm being stupid. Well, I tell you this because this is kind of how it is with Greek pronouns. English speakers look at Greek pronouns and say these are complicated and unnecessary, and we accuse them of being irrational and everything else, and that's simply not true. Greek pronouns are very consistent, very rational, very clear compared to English pronouns. So as is so often the case, the problem is not with Greek, but with English. And we'll see that English pronouns are not consistent, but Greek pronouns are. So on to the Greek third person pronoun. Remember this crazy chart of how English declines and we see the third person pronoun in the singular has gender. So we have he and she and it. Or for the possessive, his and hers and its. The dative, to him, to her, to it. And then the accusative, him, her, it. Notice that it does not have a different form for the, we would call it objective in English, or the accusative in Greek. The others do. So this is very erratic behavior. And when we pop over to the plural forms, we notice that there are no genders, right? Okay, so that's just sort of weird. If you want to see something not weird, and in fact beautiful, take a look at the third person pronoun in Greek. It is just stunning in its symmetry and regularity, okay? So let's just say these, just to get these stuck in our head. Autos, go ahead and repeat after me. Autos, autou, auto, auton. Autoi, auton, autois, autus. So there are our masculine forms. Now we have feminine forms of the third person pronoun in Greek. So it's aute, autes, aute, autain, autai, auton, autais, autos. And here are our neuter forms. Auta, autu, auto, auta. Auta, auton, autois, auta. All right, so if you are looking at this, I hope you're seeing some real similarities with a couple of things we've looked at before. Oh, are you seeing it? Are you all a-tingle with the glory of it all? It's if you've been learning the noun endings, and then the article, and then here we have the third person pronoun, you see this pattern in all three places, right? So we had os, u, o, on, for example, with the noun endings, and here we have ha, tu, to, ton. And with the third person pronoun, autos, autu, auto, auton. And can you see that really the third person pronoun looks a lot like just the article with an ow stuck onto the front. So the third person pronoun is pretty easy to recognize. It follows the nice 2-1-2 pattern. So like if you know your noun endings in the 2-1-2, you pretty much know the article, right? Because you basically just have to stick a tau on front of the noun endings. Do you see that? And if you know the article, you pretty much know the third person pronoun because all you have to do is stick an ow in front of the article. Ooh. So autos, we're used to the nominative masculine singular being odd, but then autu just looks, exactly like the article here, right? Autu, auto, auton, autoi, auton, autois, autus. Looks just like the article. Okay, glorious, magnificent, resplendent. I hope that you're getting the beauty of this. The beauty of this is not just that it's symmetrical, it's that you really don't have to learn that much once you begin to see the patterns. Now, if you don't see the patterns, then it's just all like a big jumble to you. So good luck with that because you've got to see the patterns. But the best way to learn about pronouns, or anything else for that matter, is in the wild. And we've seen there are a lot of pronouns in the wild. In just about every Greek text, they are everywhere. So you must become friends with this word, the pronoun autos, the third person personal pronoun. Okay, let's just look at some of these and see if we can understand in these verses what's going on. Di autu, remember, when you see a preposition, the case of its object will be tied together with the preposition. So we don't use keywords or anything else. Dia, remember we're missing an alpha here, so that's why we have our apostrophe. Dia takes the genitive, so it means through him. Here we have apart from him, a little bit different use of the genitive that you'll get into more in second semester Greek, but the genitive can be very flexible. Here's one we should be sort of used to. In takes the, hopefully you know that right, dative case, all right? Here's one finally that's not connected with any prepositions or anything else. The darkness, he skatia, auta, not, kat elabin, not overcame or understood. Interesting verb, but more about that later. Okay, the darkness not overcame it. Now remember, auta could be either nominative or accusative. That's always the case with the neuter. Remember that the nominative and accusative forms are always the same. So you have to go from context. Well, here it's pretty clear. The darkness is not overcoming it. So it is receiving the action. This is accusative case. We know too, by the way, that we wouldn't translate this. The darkness did not overcome him or her, because this is the neuter form. So we're talking about it. Well, let's look at this next one. This man's name was named to him John. Onoma auto Ioannes. Named to him John. You can kind of figure that one out. It's not very English, but we understand it. Here we have dia with the genitive again. Look at this one. And hakosmos, the world, auton uk egno. The world, him, not it knew. Okay? Weird English word order here, right? We would say the world did not know him. But here we have, since we have the accusative case, John is bringing that to the front, probably a little emphasis there. The world, him, did not know. Okay? So auton, receiving the action of the not knowing, and so this is accusative case. Here we have they received him, once again, accusative case. He gave to them, dative case. To those who believing in the name of him, or we would translate it, his name, of course. I translate all of these this way just to point out and make very clear this genitive and this keyword of. Of him means his, right? Okay, in the name of him. Nice genitive form. So are you starting to see how these endings, I mean, you just got to know them, and once you get used to it, they apply all over the place. But okay, here we have the glory of him, autu. It could be it, depending on, remember this form is the same for the masculine and the neuter, but okay, the glory of him or it. Here we have peri. Don't ever miss those prepositions because the preposition here now is controlling the case of this pronoun. Concerning him. Peri with the genitive means concerning. All right, and here we have another genitive form, his fullness, the fullness of him. I'll just do a few more here. Here we have pros auton, pros, another preposition, right? So we're looking at the case of the object is accusative. Pros with the accusative means him, or I'm sorry, to. There we go. Here we have a nice straightforward accusative. They might ask him. So we have accusative case. Same thing going on here. They asked him. And here they said, therefore, they said, auto, to him. Context tells us here that it's him, not it. Remember, the forms are the same. So sometimes Greek doesn't explain everything. English rarely does, okay? Greek gives you more information, but there still are times where you have to look at context to know what case, number, and gender are. All right, they asked him. Here we go again, just nice direct object. And they said to him, another dative. So he answered to them. Now, we don't translate the to here. He answered to them or something like that. Remember, we've seen before that certain verbs take their object in the dative, but we don't translate the dative. So don't worry too much about that. But it's pretty clear, right? He answered to them. You could even translate it that way, and it wouldn't sound that bad, would it? Loose of him, again, genitive, his. In other words, the strap of his sandal. I want to skip on down. There was one on down here that I thought was sort of interesting because it included a whole bunch of uses here. Look at verse 38 and look at all these different uses of autos. So here we have Jesus turning and seeing case, number, and gender. Could you tell me? Accusative, plural, and masculine. Because we're talking here about the people that are following Jesus, okay? And it's the disciples following him. But, okay, he's seeing them, so that's accusative. They're receiving the action of that verb. And then he says to them. Notice how autos became autois, to them. And they turned around and they said auto, to him, singular. Okay, Rabbi, where are you staying? And then he says to them, okay, just see the singulars and plurals, and they said to him, auto. Are you seeing how these endings change things around? All right, there's really nothing new in all the rest of the verses here. He says to them, here we have direct object, seeing him. Here we have another example of a verb taking its object in the dative, but don't worry about that. He says to him. So anyway, you get the idea, right? That we have these third-person pronouns, and he, she, or it. And the problem is not so much the Greek, which is very consistent, but with the English. We have to get used to making the translation in our heads from the perfectly regular, beautiful, systematic, well-ordered Greek to the chaotic, inconsistent, erratic, frustrating English, right? Okay, so Greek is our friend, and we're trying to make peace here with English. In John 1, autos is used only as a personal pronoun. And as you can see, that is by far the most common use of autos as a, personal pronoun, just like in English. But there are a couple of ways that autos is used in Greek that are not like English. So let's take a quick look at those. Sometimes autos is used for emphasis. I put a couple of examples of this in the Little Greek Grammar. Again, this is not that common, but you just need to be aware that it happens. I wrote this first sentence just for you, okay? Ego, autos, didasko, koine, humin. I myself am teaching koine, that is like koine Greek, humin, to you. Now, from our last lesson, I hope you recognize humin. That's a second person personal pronoun. Remember, dative form, so we use the keyword to. And this is plural. I could have translated it to y'all. But hey, that's last lesson. Now what we're looking at is this odd word, or this odd use of the word right here. Ego autos. Now, if you just look that up on your master chart, you would translate this I, he, or something like that, because autos means he. That would be wrong, because this is one of those odd uses of autos where it's emphasizing. I myself, I am teaching koine to you. Now, when you see autos used in this emphasizing way, it will never have the article. The fancy word for that is predicate use, but just for now, remember, no article. Ego autos didasko, I myself. Well, here's another example. Autos ha pater philei humas. Okay, now again, if you just transliterated that and you went to your chart, you would say, he, the Father, he loves you. Oh, by the way, see that? See that? Right? Hopefully you recognize it. Second person personal pronoun again from our last lesson. It's in the accusative case because it's receiving the action of the verb, right? The Father loves you. Okay, but again, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this, okay? Autos ha pater. Notice there is no article. So it gives this possibility that we have this emphasizing use of autos. And in this case, of course, this just means himself, the Father, loves you. Obviously, in English, we would smooth that out and say the Father himself loves you. The Greek here is making this Father very emphatic. The Father, right? The Father himself loves you. So the autos emphasizes. It's like it comes back and says the noun again for emphasis without saying the noun. It stands in for the noun, which is what pronouns do. So be aware of this odd use of autos. Ego autos, I myself. Autos ha pater, the Father himself. And then the third way that autos can be used is the most rare of all, so please don't sweat too much about this one, but just to make you aware, autos sometimes can be used in a sentence to mean like the same, like the identical, and you will fill in the noun. Sometimes you'll need it, sometimes you won't. This is a usage that, again, is not too common. Let me just show you an example again from the grammar. So here it is. Let's read it together. Kai, pollen, apelthon, prosyuxata, ton, auton, logon. Now, don't worry too much about the first part of it. It has a participle and all kinds of things we're not used to. But, okay, and again, leaving, he prayed, ton auton logon. If we just translated directly from the master chart here, we would translate it like this, the him word. Doesn't make any sense, right? But that would be incorrect. In this case, it's that idiomatic usage with the idea of same, ton auton logon. Now, when we translate this way, it usually does have the article. And so we would look for that, not always, but usually. But sometimes auton can mean same. That's what you need to be aware of. Again, it's not that common, so don't be afraid of it, just be aware of it. So there you have it, the third person pronoun. We saw that first and second person pronouns do not have gender, and they're a little bit odd in how they decline. You just have to memorize those. But the third person pronoun, which is so common, behaves like a perfect angel. It's just easy to recognize, easy to spot. It's just downright heavenly, isn't it?